Hello everybody. In today's video we are going to continue with our analysis of the 6 pillars of faith in Islam, and today we are going to speak about messengers, the belief in messengers and what this implies for a Muslim. And regarding messengers or prophets, it is the belief in Islam that God has sent many prophets throughout history in order to guide humanity, in order to give his message, in order to bring people closer to him. And throughout time, in many languages, to different cultures, different people, he has sent different prophets specifically for them, and with specific messages and revelations for a specific nation. Therefore, it's a very important pillar of faith in the Islamic religion to believe and to recognize these prophets and their message. Of course, within the Islamic tradition, it is accepted that the last prophet, the prophet of Islam, is the Prophet Muhammad, and he is the ultimate and the last prophet, meaning that the Islamic belief, after him there is no more prophecy, no more prophets, and this is the belief in Islam. But before him, many other great prophets are known. Of course, we know of names such as Noah, Abraham, Jacob, Jesus, Moses, and others. But there have been many more prophets. In fact, the Quran mentions by name around 25 of them. But we know, according to the Islamic tradition, that God has sent more than 120,000 prophets. And the majority of them, we don't know their names, we don't know their message, and we don't know to whom have they been sent. But the tradition says that a lot of these thousands of prophets have been sent for humanity throughout time. Therefore, we must be careful, and this is what scholars point, that we must be careful about pointing or judging about previous revelations, because we don't know. We don't know if what these people have in certain parts is a revelation that they got from certain prophet that God sent for them. So, since we don't know, we simply remain silent and we accept what we have received, and whoever wants to learn about this, okay, we teach them. But at the same time, we cannot say if such well-known figure, let's say in India or in China or in Japan or in many other countries, or for the Mayas and the Aztecs, they have prophets and people that they call us holy messengers from God. But we don't know. Since we don't know, we simply remain silent, because, like we said, in the tradition it says that more than 120,000 prophets, and we don't know who they were or their message. Therefore, God has sent these messengers for humanity, and in Islam, therefore, we speak about the things that we know, and what we don't know, we just remain silent. And of course, recognizing that the last prophet came with the clear revelation as a combination of all previous revelations and all previous known or most well-known traditions of the Abrahamic faith, in order to clarify and explain things in a concise way, in a clear way, not only for the Arabs, but for all humanity. And regarding prophets, something very important that must be emphasized, and I would like to quote from Professor Ramadan when he says that, and he says the following: regarding the prophets, he says that all the messengers were human beings who had no divine attributes and were not sons of God. And this is important because sometimes it's true that we love the prophets, and in Islam it's emphasized, of course, that we must love all the prophets. And we see the prophets as role models, like the closest to perfection of human beings. These are the prophets, the example to follow, to imitate. But at the same time, we cannot forget that the prophets were human beings, meaning they were not divine, they were not sons of God. Therefore, we have to be careful not to give too much. Let's say, even though we express our love, this love shouldn't be turned into idolatry, like sadly many people have done with many prophets. Previously, many prophets have been turned into divine beings, and later on they were even turned into God, and certain prophets have been recognized as if they were God themselves. And even in Islam, there are certain groups that revere so much the prophet that sometimes they could fall into idolatry, turning the prophet or giving so much praise more than God himself. And this is a reality that we have seen it in many groups, and even scholars, imams, that have been turned in, their word is accepted as if what they say is the word of God. And we have to be careful about these things. Again, prophets were human beings, and today, though there have been other holy persons, great scholars that have come to kindle the fire of the religion, to keep the religion alive, to explain things, great scholars, great holy people, very close to God, still they are not prophets and they are not God. Therefore, the opinion of scholars, the opinion of imams are opinions, and they have tried to do the best they can to guide the people, but that doesn't mean that someone has to follow blindly the opinions of people, because sometimes opinions could be different from certain groups, for certain different schools of thought within Islam. There are 4 major schools of thought, and there are different interpretations. I'm not saying these are wrong or right. My point is not that one. The point is that each of these schools sometimes interpret the same thing in different ways. And it's like a doctor who prescribes for certain, let's say, for certain disease. There could be different doctors that prescribe different medications for the same thing. Now, this doesn't mean that their opinion is wrong. They are different opinions. Therefore, if all of them work, okay, no big deal. And that's why disagreements must be avoided. Sometimes we see factions and groups within the religion, within Islam, since this is the context that we are analyzing. People against each other. My sheikh says something and the other says something. Okay, you follow your school, okay, that's your community. But you must acknowledge that there's also other opinions about how to approach the same topic. And again, I'm emphasizing this because if this is happening with people who are blindly following the opinion of leaders, thinking this is the word of God, we have to be careful. Because sometimes it looks that they're even going beyond the level of recognizing that there's also a prophet, and the prophet says certain things. And even the prophets, we have to be careful not to turn them into idols, or what we call prophet idolatry, in the sense that sometimes, and I understand that because of the love that we feel for a prophet or for the prophets, but sometimes, sadly, and I don't want to mention names, but since I'm explaining this and I just want to be clear. For example, in Shia Islam, there's this belief that sometimes even the religious leaders, they are put up to the level of the prophet, and sometimes even up to the level of God. And if sometimes a leader could say something, you follow what the leader says and not what even God or the prophet said. And we have to be careful with this kind of thinking. And like I said, in previous religions and previous revelation, they have turned prophets into divine beings and then into God themselves, into sons of God. And this is like the extent in which we could fall in idolatry. And again, we emphasize prophets, they are role models. We acknowledge there have been many prophets. We love the prophets. But we have to have the clear and correct perspective. They were not divine. They were not sons of God. They were perfect human beings that were sent by God to convey a message, But more important is He who sent the Prophet, God. And He should be the one that we worship. And this is the clear proof of monotheism. And I just wanted to point this because it's something that I have noticed, and it's important to emphasize, to recognize, because it happened in history, and it's happening also today. These things that I'm explaining, and sometimes it takes courage to say these things, to explain, but it must be said. And ultimately remembering that within the Islamic faith, as I'm emphasizing, they believe in the recognition of prophets in plural, and the recognition of the Prophet Muhammad as the ultimate prophet with the last message for humanity is of capital importance and one of the pillars of faith for any Muslim all over the world. And it's important to clarify these terms. And this is, I think, all that I want to say regarding prophets, regarding the belief in prophets and messengers sent by God for humanity. And like I said, emphasizing that the last prophet, according to the Islamic religion, is the Prophet Muhammad, and with him came up close to revelation. Therefore, after that, we just simply have scholars who try their best to explain things in their best. They are not perfect, they make mistakes, but at the end, that's why with time, as time passes, new scholars come and they correct the understanding, and they approach things in different ways, and they try their best. Because at the end, I sincerely think and hope that everybody throughout time, they just want to do what is right. Though, of course, there have been of certain people throughout time that it's sad to say, but certain governments that because of greed or power or influence from government, they have said things, written things for political interest, for power, dominion. And like Imam al-Ghazali said, that when you see these things, you have to run from these individuals like if you're running from a lion, because it's a reality. What I'm saying has been written and has been explained by great sheikhs and scholars throughout time, and I'm just bringing one right now, one of the greatest, Imam al-Ghazali, when he explains about the dangers and the obstacles and the issues that we face in our community. And it's a reality that these things have happened, not only within Islam, like I said, but also in other religions, in other traditions, and it's a fact. So I just want to end this video, again, just going back to the first statement. They believe in the messengers sent by God to humanity with a message for humankind throughout time, throughout history. It's one of the pillars of faith for the Islamic religion. As always, I want to thank you for your attention, and God willing, we'll see each other in the next video.